Good evening. Let me know if you can hear me out on YouTube, Jan. Jargons, good evening. Hey, Jargons, let me know if you can hear me. I want to make sure we're coming through very clearly, loud and clear. Jargons, can you hear me? I know people are coming into the chat. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear before we commence.
Sling has all the important national news you need.
Hey, you can, yeah. So, hey, Drew Ross, good evening, good evening. I know people are going to be pouring in a bit, but I don't have a lot of time. We're going to get started. I will say this. If you see me dozing off or something, it's because I haven't slept. When I finished the show last night, I went straight to the hospital because, I have some family emergency, like I mentioned. And on another show, I'm going to talk about it because hospitals here are challenging. But let's get started. Welcome, Brando, Drew Ross, everyone. Welcome to the Cranky Live show. I am extremely happy about this evening because one of my favorite analysts is going to be on with me. Tonight, we sit down with one of the most respected and seasoned voices in Caribbean sport, in journalism, frankly, but nowadays a lot in sport. A man whose words have captured some of the region's most iconic sporting moments over the past 3 decades. Leighton Levy began his career as an investigative reporter and news editor at Jamaica Gleaner before being a founding editor of the Jamaica News Network and managing editor of today's newspaper in St. Maarten. So he's had extensive experience throughout the Caribbean. But it was his time at SportsMax, which more recently closed down, owned by Digicel. They've gone a different direction, where we spent a number of years as a senior content editor that, in my view, cemented his legacy as a pillar in Caribbean sports media. From covering global athletics, which we hear his voice, his encyclopedia knowledge, in the golden era of Jamaican track and field, where we all sit in front of our TV and just smile when we see the Bolts and the Shelly-Ann and the Elaine running, and him being with his encyclopedic memory, giving us all the details and fact. His insight, and he's not one-dimensional, his insights on football, on cricket, and the business of sport. Leighton has consistently delivered excellence, depth, and clarity in his reporting. Now he's on a new venture. SportsMax have closed down, and he said, you know what? I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something independent. I'm entrepreneurial. Is a digital platform, and the name fits him to a T, Mr. Analyst. He continues to shape the conversation around the region. And what I want you to do, each of you, as you come in, Mr. Analyst is up and live on YouTube. Go like, share, and subscribe when you have this program, and go subscribe currently. So without further ado, please welcome the indomitable, the one and only Leighton Levy. Leighton, good evening.
Good evening, Richard. It's a pleasure being here. Of course, your description of me a while ago, I'm trying to remember who that person was.
So you said your own legacy. That's what happened, You can't recognize yourself anymore. How you doing? How you doing?
I'm not too bad. Busy day as usual. We're just starting with Mr. Analyst, which is just over a week old, and trying to visualize what the content will eventually look like. Right now, it's just random, but eventually trying to organize what it will eventually look like, because I want it to be unique in the sense that I bring to the audience the kind of information that they'll find useful and hopefully they'll find entertaining as well. So it's a challenge because there's so many people in the spaces doing similar things. So you have to do something that will enhance the experience for the viewers. And of course, make it worthwhile, make it something that they want to see, they want to come back to each day whenever we post a new video.
Well, see, you have a leg up on all of us. People don't seem to realize that, right? So you look at that Stephen A. Smith, Gilbert Arenas, all those guys who had a platform before, they've made their name, they've had credibility, they have facts to back them up. We know who they are. There's name recognition. You bring that to market. So whatever direction you go in, it probably won't really matter, to be honest, because you're a sports enthusiast, you cover sports, you just have the conversation, people are going to gravitate towards you. So I wouldn't worry. If I were you, I would just, I'm going to put up my content. I know football, I know cricket, I know track and field, especially track and field, where if I put out a track and field video and I have another channel with 300 people, I get 3,000 people because they love it. And you're talking facts. So you'll be fine. You'll be great at it.
Well, to be honest, I mean, when we just started, I posted my first video on Monday night last week. Well, first, let me apologize. I live next to a main roadway, and sometimes the sound filters. I'm on the third floor,
right?
And sometimes the sound from the traffic filters in. So I apologize for that. But what it is that when I posted the video on Monday night last week, Monday night at about 9:00, I was thinking maybe you get 50 subscriptions in next week. That's what I was thinking. And when I woke up the Tuesday morning, which is about 9 hours later, because I'm up early most mornings, and I saw that the only 2 subscribers were my wife and my mother. Like, okay, this is not going to be working out so well. But I'm telling you, the thing that shocked me most was that when I was going to bed that night, we were writing a thank you for the number of people, because we were actually surprised at the number of people who had subscribed at the time. And when we started writing, it was like 771 subscribers. By the time the 3-sentence or 4-sentence paragraph was completed, we were gone up to 800 and something. The following morning, we were up to over 1,000, and by the end of the second day, we were close to 2,000. So I'm using this opportunity as well to say thank you for those people who have subscribed, because I honestly didn't expect that, because normally it takes a while to build a following. And as I keep telling my people and telling my wife and my family, people close to me, is that I don't usually see myself as someone who is a celebrity or somebody who is popular. My early mentor at the Gleaner, Carl Wint, had always said to me, "You're the storyteller, you're never part of the story." So that's how I've always seen myself. So the reaction so far has been very encouraging, and I'm looking forward to be able to build on it with some more insightful and meaningful content, as time passes by.
So what I like to do here is do a sort of chronological perspective on individuals. So I want to start from the early years. And I know we only have an hour, probably less now. So
I can probably give you a little bit more than that.
Okay, you could be here for 3 hours, but anyway, where did your journey start? Like, people want to know what parish you were born in, where you grew up, where did that journey start before we get to the journalism? Where did that journey start?
I grew up in a little town called Ulster Spring, Albertown in Trelawney, actually. My parents were both teachers. My mom was the vice principal of Albertown High School. And I eventually went to Sacred Heart Academy in Christiana and passed my common entrance back in those days to the Carteret College in Mandeville. Transferred to Knox in 1980, graduated from Knox. Spent a year at Cumberland College. Did some entrepreneurial stuff in Montgomery. I won't get into that because a lot of detail there. And then I worked at NCB Mandeville I joined NCB Mandeville in February 1986. And then I resigned in September and eventually ended up at what people now know as the University of Technology, but back then it was called CAST, the College of Arts and Technology. I was doing chemical technology, and Gilbert hit in 1988, September. Everybody remembers that. Well, everybody who's old enough to remember that. And during that interim, I had a friend of mine called Karen Kelly. And Karen was saying to me, "Shira," that's what they call me, "Shira, why don't you apply for a job at the Leader? Because you know so much about, you're always talking about sports." But it was always something that I did. Even when I was a child, I used to go to the library and read the encyclopedia on people like G.C. Foster and Herb McKinley and Arthur Wint, Donald Quarry, who was my big hero at the time. And but I never saw myself as a sports journalist at all. Anyway, so I applied for the job at the Gleaner, got the job. But the challenge was that when I got there, there's a guy called Howard Campbell who writes me the entertainment now. Howard and I literally had identical scores on the aptitude tests that they did at the Gleaner at the time. It was a batch of tests. You sat before a panel, first of all, of 4 or 5 people. They sent you on mock interviews and to do stories and then submit as if they're going to be published in the paper. But there were certainly just for the eyes of the panelists, who are people who were deciding whether or not you got the job or not. Dr. Stokes, Carl Wint, Evelyn Gager, Paulette Williams, and I think Lloyd Williams were the people who were, marshalling my entry. And so Dr. Stokes said to us on the day when they were deciding that there were there was one position available on the sports desk, and both of you have identical scores. So only one person can get the job. So I put my hand up and said, listen, if there are any opportunities on the news desk, I'd glad to take it. And they said yes. So I ended up on the news desk, and Howard took the job on the sports desk, because then I was able to still write sports. And eventually I ended up being a crime reporter for 5 years, almost 6 years, covering court, covering crime. I remember the first assignment I was sent on with a reporter called Warren Wint was down to Matthews Lane, where that a few days before I joined the Gleaner, actually, there were some bodies found in a handcart at the bottom of Matthews Lane, and the idea was that these guys were killed by the guys at Matthews Lane, which they were refuting. So Zeeks, I think many people would be familiar with Zeeks' name. Yep. Invited the media down to Matthews Lane to explain that they had nothing to do with those bodies. And when we got there, within minutes, some guys from over by Pink Lane, you saw them running across from Coronation Market, firing bullets at where we were. and I'm like, okay, first the other job and I'm dead. So okay, that's fine. So we ended up hiding behind a news car. Man, a driver called Scales, we were behind the news car, Warren, and then the gunmen were on the bottom of Matthews Lane. And eventually, the mobile reserve on the top of Matthews Lane, they were firing across each other. The gunmen from Matthews Lane were firing at both directions. And this is what I was in the middle of on the very first day of the job. And when I got back to the Gleaner, through some kind of miracle, I had to go home and change my shirt because I was drenched in sweat. And so Calvin came to me and he said, so what do you think? You're going to do crime? I'm like, hell yeah.
Really? I would have the opposite perspective on that.
Yeah, it was then when I realized that, listen, if you're going to die, you might as well die doing something interesting.
Right.
And crime reporting for me at the time, I mean, crime wasn't what it was then. I mean, we're still way under 1,000 murders a year. We're like over just over 300 murders a year. But there was interesting stories because at the time, I think just a few months before I joined the Gleaner, Natty Morgan and Peter Lawrence had escaped from the gun court, and they were at large. And so after that incident, I was assigned pretty much to cover Natty Morgan. I was everywhere he was. I was there a few minutes later, and I had some contacts within the Olympic Gardens and, of course, Riverton communities who would then furnished me with information about what Chris was up to. That's what they called him, Chris. And so I'd write the stories for the Gleaner. The ironic thing about that was I covered Natty Morgan for the better part of a year, and the one time I went on vacation, police actually killed him on back road, and I missed the story entirely. So
wow.
Yeah, but and I was a crime reporter for many. I did court reporting, lost some policemen friends of mine. I don't remember, there was an incident back in 1994, I think it was, when 2 policemen were killed on South Parade, Desi and Willie Q. I was in court with them just minutes before that, and left to half a tree when the news car radio flashed that the 2 policemen were killed. And the following year, I was promoted to news editor of the Star. And from there on, I ran the Star, and then Claire Clark, who was formerly the deputy CEO of TV RGR Group, we both ran the Star for a number of years, and then I left the Gleaner in 2004 October. Joined JNN. That was a disaster because the people who were behind it didn't know what they were doing. And then I left and went to St. Martin for a few years to run the Today newspaper, and then came back to Jamaica. Started my radio show on News Talk by UA, transferred to that show, left and went over to Nationwide on March 15th, 2010. And then pretty much began my career covering sports, which is what I was always wanting to do. But it took me almost 10 years, actually to almost 20 years to realize that dream of doing sports. Because when I started my radio show, my first guest was Justin Gatlin, and he was just about to come back from his suspension, from drug suspension. Had that interview. During that period, I interviewed people like Ben Johnson. I interviewed so many big names that it was actually considered the fastest growing show in the morning in Jamaica. And then it evolved into other things, and but we'll get into that. But that's basically a synopsis of how I got to where I am today. Of course,
so as you have laid that sort of that journey, one question jumps out at me is, when you're covering Natty Morgan, did he appreciate you covering him? Because you probably made him sort of a celebrity, didn't you?
In a way, yeah. There's a pastor in Olympic Way called Father Albert, who we pretty much communicated through him. So whenever he was doing something, Father Albert would let me know, and then I go and then he'd probably leave a message or something. Because even with the incident where, if you're old enough, you also remember when trying to remember the names now. There's a lady and a guy who were abducted from Reynolds Mall, and eventually both were found dead on the Riverton City dump. I knew what happened. It was Natty Morgan wasn't the person who killed them. It was one of his lieutenants who then, based on what my information was, it was him who then off the lieutenant, because the lieutenant did not follow the instructions of releasing both of them, one along Spanish Town Road and one somewhere else. I'm trying to remember. But when he went to the country on some robbery sprees, and when he came back, he heard that they had died. But that's another story for another time. But
those are interesting. That's people liked it, in Jamaica, the crime thing and the bad man, the garrison argument. That's always attract attention, and people know those stories. So you have covered it, so it's a good thing. Let's transition to sport though, because that's where we are now. Which is, you've covered everything from football to track and field. Which sport has been the most rewarding for you, and why?
I think track and field, primarily because I've been involved in track and field ever since I was in prep school. I ran track in prep school. I ran track in high school. Competed for Knox at champs in 81 and 82. Competed at Intercol champs in 83. At CAST, I was a member of the CAST club and eventually managed was one of the managers for a team called the Boats of Lightning. Was the first track club in Jamaica to run under 40 seconds for the 4x1 relay. Michael Nevels, Wayne Watson, what's Beefhead's McFarlane, I don't remember Beefhead's first name, and John Muir. They were the premier members. I know there was a story in the Observer a couple of years ago with some guys claiming to be members of the Boats of Lightning. They never were. They were members of the CAST club. The Boats of Lightning team was a specific number of people. Evan Clark eventually joined that squad. Jason Shelton and Ron Wade. Those were the members of the Boats of Lightning. Nobody else. Because I can't share the story, because that's an interesting story about how they got that name. In the summer of '87, we were in the bookshop. Paul Ricketts, we call Stuffy. He's still at UTEC right now. He's in charge of the gym and the strength work for the athletes. And Michael Nevels, who's got, for those who might know him, we call him Mealy. We're in the bookshop, and we're designing gear for the Boats of Lightning for the following season. And we decided on these full body leotards, the full body tights, as people call them. And there was a Stuffy designed and drew lightning bolts across the chest. But before we sent the design to Art and Fabric, he wrote the words "bolt of lightning" to describe what was on the front of the thing. So when we went to pick up the gear, they had the lightning bolts, and on top of it were the words "bolt of lightning." That's how we got the name.
Oh, okay.
And then, so eventually the team went on and did well. And of course, it eventually broke up because the members then matriculated to university in the United States. They went to New York Institute of Technology, and Quilby went down to, that's Wayne Watson went down to University of Alabama. And the guys just eventually split up. After that, the Boats of Lightning ceased to exist. So there was no other Boats of Lightning except for that core of sprinters. And I was one of the managers of the team. Still have actually the top in my closet right now for 30 odd years later. So,
so I'm gonna come back to track and field, but let me start with football first, because you and I met at National Stadium. That's how this conversation came about. We are trying to qualify for the 2026 World Cup, and everybody, Jamaica needs to have this thing as supposed to be a soup thing. We're in an easy zone. The Reggae Boyz are,
relatively easy.
Supposed to be relatively easy. What do you make of but we have struggled throughout the qualification, as you know. Dominica, cricketing nation, we struggle with. Dominican Republic, we struggle with. We did poorly at the last Gold Cup.
At the Gold Cup. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you make of the current squad and their form?
The squad for me is 75% where it should be. I think the biggest problem with Jamaica's football, the senior squad right now, is the midfield. I think we have a good core defenders, a good enough core defenders. We have Pinnock, we have Richard King, who is now at St. Mirren. There's Greg Lay and Amari Bell. I think that's and Lemby Kisa. That's a good core defender. They're not the greatest, but I think they're good enough to get the job done. On the forward line, our midfield going forward, you have Leon Bailey, you have Cephas, who I think is a game changer player. He just learns his role a little bit more clearly, or the vision of what he needs to do. And of course, people like the name slips me right now. I don't know what's wrong with me, but we have a good core of players up front, and we have a good set of players up back. Midfield is where the challenge is. I think we've stumbled upon a workable midfield with Isaac Hayden, a former left Newcastle because they released him, John Russell. I'm not so convinced about Bobby Reid. Bobby Reid never seems to be able to be comfortable on the ball. I think he turns the ball over too often for midfield and turns the ball over in the wrong places of the field, which tends to put the defense under pressure. And so I think we need to find maybe one or two other players. Casey Palmer has been doing a decent job, to be fair. I don't think Karai is good at all. I don't think he should be in the squad any other. I think they should thank him very much for his service so far and then move on from there. I think Kaim Dixon is also a very good piece for the team as well. So if we can keep John Russell and Isaac Hayden together and have a good attacking midfielder playing in the 10, maybe that's where we can probably, I don't know if we can fit Leon Bailey into that role, because I think he tries too hard to impress instead of doing the simple things when he needs to just play simple football. But I think it's a squad that I think should qualify for the World Cup, but we have to have the right midfielders, because the key thing about the midfielders for me is that two things. One, we need to be able to protect the defense, and we also need to be able to find the forwards with those passes, whether in the half spaces or in the channels, which is where I think Mason Greenwood, should he finally decide to make himself available for Jamaica, would be a good fit, because I think he can take the ball deep, he can dribble, he can shoot, he can score. I don't think we have that consistently well enough. I think Romain Burrell is a good addition to the team, but I don't think he's settled in the team yet. I think Warren.
Warren.
No.
Forward? Or
yeah.
Brown?
Warner Brown. Sorry.
Warner Brown?
Yeah. I think if Mason Greenwood can join that group of players, I think Jamaica will be potent going forward. And I think with the proper attacking midfield, or proper number 10, I think we should be able to get through this zone pretty easily. Curacao is a dangerous team. We might see and hear about Curacao and think that we can run past them. But they're very good players, and I think we can't sleep on them. We can't sleep on Bermuda either. As much as we think that we're probably better than they are, they're a decent team. And of course, Trinidad and Tobago, remember the Liberty Cup, we had to battle hard, and it took a last-minute penalty that was created by Cephas for us to get that penalty to win that match 3-2. So, yeah, the Reggae Boyz team, I think, is on paper good enough to qualify for the World Cup. The problem is that we're not consistent enough. And I think part of the reason for that is Steve McLaren's fault. I think he's taken too long to find his best players, because I think given the time that he's had so far, he should have had an idea of what his best 11 looks like. I don't think he has that a clear idea of what that looks like yet, which is unfortunate because we're in the final phase of qualifiers now. We should have a settled team. And we saw that in the Gold Cup, where we beat Guatemala here at the stadium quite comfortably. And then they embarrassed us in the Gold Cup. You know, we should have a settled team, knowing with the players, knowing, you know, the different personalities and character of each of their team members, knowing where they need to get the ball, knowing how to find them in the spaces that they should be when we're attacking, and how to defend and you know, maintain our shape when we defend. But what we saw in the Gold Cup was a team that was in total disarray, where there was no structure to the defense, there was no structure to the attack. And I think Steve McLaren needs to understand right now that he needs to pick his best 11. He should know what his best 11 is right now and stick with that best 11. Anybody else who comes in after that has to come in because of injury or something extraordinary. Because if we don't do that, remember, we're just over a month away from the first set of the final match against, who started against? It's the first match in September.
Bermuda first game.
Bermuda,
away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We need to have that team settled in the next month, have sessions together. I know the Premier League season started, and of course the English Championship has started. So
yeah.
At the best opportunities that we get, we need to get that team together and then have the team gel. Because one of the things about the 98 team that people tend to overlook is not the fact that the players were good or they were bad or they're ordinary, or whatever the classification was that they spent a lot of time together. They spent a lot of time living together. They spent a lot of time getting to know each other. So that when they went onto the field, they knew exactly what to expect, who was going to be where. So they could play with a certain level of fluency that we're not seeing with this team right now, which we should be seeing with this team right now, given the amount of time they've had to play together. And I think the experimentation needs to stop now. Find a formula that works, whether it's 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 or 4-4-2. Play that way, get gelled that way, and then go into that final campaign. Because it's only the zone winners that qualify for the World Cup. And I think we have been handed an easy route on paper to go to the World Cup. So I think if that happens, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't qualify.
Yeah, so I have expressed a lot of concern on this channel. I think I was one of the first person who called out when we picked this squad for the Gold Cup that we had two midfielders. We had 9 forwards, 9 defenders, and basically 2 midfielders, even though there were 5 listed, which to me is a concern. So now we're appointed Rudolph Speed as technical advisor, which has drawn mixed reaction. What's your take on his role and timing?
Look, I understand the conflict of interest concerns because they're valid. But from a national perspective, right now, maybe it's the best time for somebody like Speed to come in, because I think Speed probably understands even more than McLaren what needs to be done to get this team to be more cohesive. We've seen what he's done with Cavaliers. I mean, Cavaliers has gone and represented the region well at the CFU level and done well enough. I mean, even the matches against Inter Miami, a team that is laden with talent, and did well enough to be competitive. I think Speed brings the technical acumen into that team that I think the team, I don't want to say lacks, but he probably comes in and needs to reinforce some things that are there that need to be reinforced. And he brings in an understanding of the psyche of Jamaica and the Jamaican players that will, I think, make this team better. I think the timing right now is actually perfect. I do understand, I said before, the concerns of a conflict of interest, him being head of the technical committee and all, and of course, president of Cavaliers. But unless there's something glaringly obvious, I think the sacrifice can be made now to ensure that the national team qualifies for the World Cup.
So I have my last question on football is a more macro question.
Yeah.
What needs to change institutionally for Jamaica to stop just qualifying and actually become competitive at the global level in football?
We need to build from the bottom up. It's something I had a conversation with Captain Burrell about. I've had a conversation with Michael Ricketts about. I've had a conversation with many people involved in football about. We can't build a house from the top down, okay? No matter where you are in the world, no matter what you do, that's not how you build anything. That's not how you build sustainability. If you remember, back in 1998, we had literally 4 players coming from overseas. Now we're largely dependent on overseas, the players from the UK or wherever they're playing in the rest of the world. Of course, there are a number of Jamaican players who have gone abroad and come back, like a Leighton Levy, like a Nicholson and Cephas and others who have, they got their roots here, but they went abroad and came back with that experience. So I have no problem with that. The thing is Jamaica needs to create a integrated grassroots program with a national philosophy of how we want to play football. That's something that I've spoken to Captain Burrell about. I've spoken to a lot of people within the JFF about, and I don't know if they take me seriously or not, because probably I'm not a known football name, so maybe they think, okay, I don't know what I'm talking about. But if you look at the successful nations, Panama, let's use a country from the region, Panama's players, for the most part, have been playing together from they were like 10 years old, right through the different age groups. And now they're a competitive force. They're not a USA, yes, and they're not a Mexico, yes, because those countries have more and better resources and probably better coaching overall. But that's what Jamaica needs to do. We can't depend on high school football to develop our players. When you're looking at what the high school, a lot of these kids coming into high school are learning football at high school level. They should be learning that football from their old 6 to 10. I say 6 to 10 because their countries actually start their players earlier, 3 and 4, like in Belgium and in Germany and in Italy, where they use 2-on-2 football for the kids, and in trying to matriculate up to 3 against 3, 6 against 6, and so forth and so on. So what Jamaica, I think, can probably do, we can start up an integrated grassroots program, build it through support from FIFA, support from corporate Jamaica, and of course the JFF, and maybe from the CFU or CONCACAF as well. Bring in the coaches at a grassroots level. Build a strong cadre of players who will, because when you start them early and you start to have them master the different skill sets, or all the basics, ball control, first touch, heading, passing, they should have mastered all those things by the time they're between 10 and 13 years old. And when they're now guided by a national philosophy, we know what kind of players to look for. So we know we need speed, because Jamaica is known for their speed. We've seen it with Cephas and how dangerous he is. There can be more players like that in our midfield, in our defense. So we will then call players who are have all those skill sets, speed, the ball control, all the different skill sets. And then they come through the different age group systems. If they want to go to their respective high schools, of course, they're going to go to their respective high schools and play football. But invariably, they have to come back under a national program, under a consistent training program. And then eventually, by the time they get to under 19, maybe they can start to matriculate into the national team. That's how, the reason why when we go to these under 19 World Cups and so on, we run into teams where a lot of those kids are already playing professional football in clubs across the world. Look at Yamal, for example, that plays for Barcelona. He's just turned 18 years old. We can do the same here in the Caribbean, but we have to have a structured approach to it and an integrated approach where that you don't have one academy doing one thing and another academy doing something else. Everybody should be developing their players with a similar national under the umbrella of a similar national philosophy that will help Jamaica's players have a specific identity, so that when they come into the national team, there is no dysfunction, there is no trying to get used to each other, because they already know what is expected of each other, because this is what the philosophy is of Jamaican football. And I think over a 10-15 year period, we can build a strong team, and a team that is consistently of high quality, because as soon as players matriculate out of the squad because of age or whatever reason, then the next set of players can come in and literally seamlessly fall into the national program. That's what needs to be done. Whether there's a will to do it is another matter.
Yeah, but I've said this, and that was my last question, but I'll just make a comment, which is this. You mentioned Panama. I think Costa Rica is also another example of a country, small population, who's done really well.
Yep.
Right? Or you can even extend it out to say a Uruguay, but they have the history. They won the first World Cups, a couple World Cups. The one country I think one should try to emulate and where that's embedded is Spain, for example. How Spain play football, right? They've been dominant on the world stage. I mean, not win all the tournaments, but they've been dominant. Their style of play and the coaches they produce and all that. And you made an important point, which is you got to build the kids from the ground up.
Yeah.
But we also got to think about administratively, right? Do we have the right people in the right seat that have the vision and the strategy to allow us to achieve those objectives? So I just made that one.
Yeah, but absolutely. And just to add to that as well, one of the things that we do in Jamaica is that, look, and this is not to try to denigrate anybody because I'm not. I'm just speaking generally here. Across all sports in Jamaica, we have a tendency to put people in positions of power that they might have been involved in the sport or whatever it is, but they don't have the acumen to build out the sport. So I think that dynamic needs to change and people come in paid positions to grow whatever the sport is, whether it's football or track and field. And as I said, this is a general comment.
Right.
I think it needs to shift to a point where we're putting people in positions to not just oversee the sport, but to grow the sport and develop the sport. And unfortunately, I don't think that happens enough in Jamaica.
Yeah, I think one thing my last point on this is that we got to think about Jamaica a little bit broader. We have about 6 million globally, I guess. There are people who have gone and learned their trade because we export a lot of intellectual capital, a ton of intellectual
Absolutely.
capital, which is one of our biggest problems as a country. People don't realize that is the brain drain, right? Yeah. That brain has gone overseas and learned and developed and can be leveraged, not even just for compensation, just to give back. And we got to think a little bit broader as a country and as a people versus more isolationist. I'll translate to cricket, not a lot and I've been around for a while. I know in West Indies we're dominant. And right now, so and you're a cricket aficionado. What do you love? Because you talked about you being an athlete and you running at champs and all that. But where you love of cricket came from, and who were some of your early cricketing heroes?
All right, so that's an interesting story. Right, when I was growing up, my dad, who passed in 2017, a massive cricket fan. He was president of Kiwanis Club of South Sri Lanka, and they'd have these outings. And at those outings, these community things where, like more like a community fair, they'd have these cricket matches, and my dad would play. And just standing by the sideline and watching him play, I don't know, it's like a natural thing. You just felt like this is something that you would like to be able to do. I was never really good at it. I bowled at a decent medium pace. I could bat a little. But then what happened now is that over time, I used to hear my dad get up in the middle of the night and turn on the radio, because this wasn't the day of digital. It was turn on the radio in the middle of the night, because what I eventually found out was that he was listening to cricket matches of the West Indies playing in India, where they 13 off, 10 times from Australia, Pakistan, wherever it is, England. And what I started to get up. And while he was in the living room listening to the radio, I had a little blue transistor radio in my bedroom. And I turned the radio on and find a channel and listen to the cricket matches. At the first, I didn't have a clue of what I was listening to. But eventually, I started to learn the game, because then I went to the library, looked at the rules of cricket, found a book on our bookshelf at home called Cricket Brightest Summer by L.D. Roberts, that spoke about the series between Australia and the West Indies in the 60-61 series with Frank Worrell as the captain of the West Indies team. And I read that book from cover to cover in about a day and a half. And from there, it's like I was infected. And so I was just everything. There was a time in high school where I had a folder that was this thick of me scoring matches, listening to matches on the radio in the night. Literally ball by ball. Greenwich hits a 4-4, single 1, dot 4, not scoring, and I'd go on. And so over time, I actually there was a point where I could actually remember everything on those sheets of paper, and it just grew from there. And my early cricketing hero, to answer that part of the question, funny enough, was Garfield Sobers, because while reading that book, Cricket's Brightest Summer. Well, no, let me correct that. My first cricketing hero was actually Frank Worrell, but Garfield Sobers it was within that same window. Frank Worrell, because having read the book, I discovered that Frank Worrell was the first black captain for the West Indies. And in my research and my reading early, because I used to read a lot. I mean, by the time I was 10 years old, I was going to the library almost virtually every day reading stuff. I sometimes even tore sheets of pages out of the encyclopedias and took them home. Yeah, so just to have them.
Page 15 is missing. Page 15.
Yeah, come to my yard. You'll find it in my books. Yeah, and just learning about how difficult it was for Frank Worrell to become captain of the West Indies, because when I learned he was born in Barbados, eventually became a member of parliament in Jamaica. And just the Jamaican connection and what he had to go through just made me really embrace what he was trying to achieve and what he eventually achieved. And of course, Garfield Sobers, he was in that team. I think he was 17 when he was in that team. And, or no, it was early 20s, I think. But the thing about it, you started reading about the other players in the team. The Garfield Sobers, and of course, Frank Worrells and the West Halls. And eventually these players almost became lifelike figures to you, because while we didn't see them on TV, we heard about their stories on radio while the commentators were talking. You would read about them virtually every day in everything that you could possibly read. And so those are my first heroes. And eventually, then back in the early 70s, when I just started going to high school, I heard about this youngster called Michael Holding. And then I saw Michael Holding on a video one day. This was a video, it was a reel, the reel-to-reel thing. And I was like, this is ridiculous. The things that he was doing, the pace at which he was bowling. I remember he went to Australia in 75, and Australia clobbered him. And back in then it came 76.
Wait, the 75-76 series where Roy Frederick scored 169 the second test. They lose 5-1.
Where Everson got clobbered 5-1 in that series. And then, of course, 76, Clive Lloyd built this amazing team with Andy Roberts and Colin Croft, Joel Garner, and Michael Holding, which eventually became the Furious Foursome. And that pretty much cemented it for me. So at that point, I was already running track in high school. So it was track and cricket. That's the only two sports I concerned myself with until 1979, when I discovered Magic Johnson, a magazine, and then became an elevator fan after that.
So you're a basketball fan too. You're really a sports fan.
Yeah.
So here's a question. What happened to cricket? West Indies cricket?
All right. So here's what happened with cricket. From my perspective, is back in the day when exposure to sports were limited to basically what we played at our homes in the Caribbean, cricket was the dominant sport. Primarily because of the influence, of course, of the West Indies teams. And of course, I remember back in the day when Shell Shield was going on, all the stars were playing in Shell Shield. The Michael Holdings, Viv Richards, Clive Lloyd, all of them was playing. Eldin Baptiste, all of them were playing for their regional teams.
All right.
Back in those days, everywhere you went, people were playing cricket. Kids were playing cricket on the street, they were playing cricket on the beach, they were playing cricket in their yards, they were playing cricket everywhere. So what happened is that some talent emerged. They made it into their respective regional teams. They went into England because, remember, West Indies players started going into England from the 1930s.
Yep, county cricket,
Yep. So these guys were going into England and developing their games, learning how to play the swinging deliveries, learning how to play, in different conditions and different pitches, and eventually honed what became the West Indies team, the great West Indies team. I remember back in '77 when, what's his name from Australia, Packer, brought the West Indies players down, because they were, at the time, they were still learning about what it was to become professional. And then the World Series cricket, I think, then made them into a professional unit. And then, boom, we dominated for better part of 20 years. And then the English kind of started realizing that we were using their own county cricket to dominate them. and they stopped selecting our players. And of course, on the other side of that, the players just weren't good enough anymore, because they weren't as committed to the sport as the previous players were. I remember a few years back when the Fire in Babylon was being shown, the documentary. And I remember we went going to LOJ Auditorium to watch it. And my wife and I, and there were some West Indies players there. I won't call any names because I don't want to embarrass anybody. And they did not know about that era of cricket, which was just before theirs, which to me I found remarkable. So what happened with that is that 95, when the West Indies lost at Savannah Park, where I was as well watching that match when the West Indies lost the series 2-1, started a decline of West Indies cricket. And what happened then is that because we didn't have a proper development program, similar to what I was talking about football, we didn't have a proper development system in the region, because we depended largely on county cricket to make our players better. Then we didn't have that exposure anymore, so we were struggling. And I remember back in the late 1990s, we were struggling against England, teams that we used to, we swept, we whitewashed and consecutive series in 84, and I think it was 80, I don't know, it was early 80s. We started, that decline became even more rapid. And then transition to the recent era, where the advent of T20 cricket, we lost a lot of our players to the leagues across the world. So they became part-time players for the West Indies and full-time T20 players, and Brian Lara said something about it, alluded to it recently as well, and I agree with him 100%. The players use West Indies as a platform to get into these leagues and then leave West Indies cricket behind. But the crux of the issue is that there is no proper development system in the Caribbean. I had a conversation with Reg Pereira just last night, actually, that will be aired on my channel in a couple of nights from now, once editing is complete, where we talked about the fact that there is no proper development system in the territories that support West Indies cricket. So now we have, random things going on, and of course, with the state of the pitches and the players not having to master the technique, they're playing on pitches where they can't even master the technique because they have to be adjusting on the bad pitches across the region. And then they're thrust into playing test series against teams that have proper systems, have proper players, like Australia, like an India, like an England, like a New Zealand, where we can't compete anymore because there is no development of the young players. And what we've seen over the years is that there's less interest now in test cricket, for example, because everybody wants to play T20 cricket. And when you look at how we play T20 cricket in the recent series against Australia and Pakistan, the impetus from all the players to, first of all, to hit across the line and invariably get out either LBW or getting caught off the edge of the bat. Ball flies in the air into slip because we're not playing fundamental shots anymore. If you look at how Indian players, the Australians and the English players play in T20 cricket, they're using fundamental cricket shots. We are not. And so because of the lack of development, our players are getting into the national team, and that's the national team, I'm talking about the West Indies, without the proper fundamentals. They can't play cricket. They don't have cricket brains. The only thing they're interested in is going to earn money on in the T20 leagues. And they don't practice. It's clear they don't practice. Why I say this is because the same mistakes that they make today, they're making it 1 year from now, which means that they're not practicing. They're not trying to correct the errors of their game. And invariably, where we are, where we're bowled out at 27, the second lowest score in Test history by Australia at Savannah Park, because there's a dysfunctional system that operates within the West Indies, where Cricket West Indies believes that pulling players from that dysfunctional system somehow is going to turn our fortunes around. And that's madness because, as Einstein said, you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. It's insanity. And that's what's happening to us. We don't have a proper development system. We have players who are using the West Indies platform to audition for T20 leagues. So we're losing our best players to the T20 leagues. And we're left with players who are not equipped or under-equipped to handle quality cricket from other countries.
So there are two things that jump out at me so far as you talk about the football and the cricket in terms of themes that one can see as you go ahead with the conversation. One is about leadership. And I'm always go back to the question about intellectual capital. One's about leadership. You have the right administrators in the right place with the right thought process, right strategy. And the second is about resources. If we look at the advent of cricket, England and India are probably the best examples. When I was growing up, they weren't good cricketing teams. I can only remember Gavaskar and Boycott, who couldn't score a run for whatever. They score a lot of runs, but take 3 days to score the runs in terms of how they played. And now they're two of the best cricketing nations because they've invested in the sport, but they also have the right leadership with the right vision to allow them to get there. My last question on cricket is this: is there hope?
Unless there is some commonality between the leaders of the respective regions, the federations that make up West Indies cricket, to have a proper integrated development system, starting with the young kids, getting them interested in the game, and providing the resources that are needed. Cricket West Indies alone can't do this. It needs a cooperation of the respective governments across the region. They'll always claim that they can't afford it, but then they turn around and complain when the team loses. You have to do something. Even if it's $1 million a year, for example, to go into cricket academies in Jamaica, in Barbados, in Antigua, in Guyana, in Trinidad. And from those academies, you are pulling players from the respective schools in the best talent, helping that talent to develop and putting them into programs. Similar to what I spoke about earlier with the football. Have them matriculate from one level to the next until they get into the West Indies team. That is how it needs to happen. That's what India does. That's what Australia does. That's what England does. That's what New Zealand does. We should be doing the same. And while we might not have the resources to do it as comprehensively as they do, we have to do something different from what we're doing now. And the pitches need to be improved because you can't have players learning the game playing on pitches that are minefields. The pitches in the crowd, you've been hearing for years. I remember talking to Dave Cameron when he was president of Cricket West Indies about fixing the pitches, and I said that Ken Crafton is going to come in and make sure that the pitches are good and make sure the pitches give equal sway to batsmen and bowlers. That hasn't happened. I mean, we've seen it across the region. You can't bat on some of those pitches. You can't look. You want an example of how those pitches are? Australia did not make 400 on any single pitch in the region in the Test series here, right? And they have some of the best batsmen in the world. Yeah, our bowlers are good, but they could not make runs on those pitches. So how do we expect our batsmen who are inferior to make runs on those pitches?
Well, one could say on that, Leighton, my last one is that even though the pitches are inferior, if you grew up in the region, you could better adapt than the Australians who are used to the more perfect conditions, and yet we still struggle, right? As you're mentioning, we don't have the fundamentals developed. You don't move your foot to the ball, right? You swing, your body's still standing up, and you're swinging wider your body, right? There's gaps between balance, but yeah.
Listen, that simple thing, I was telling my mother-in-law about this today because she's a big cricket fan. At Summerland Park, the ball was swinging late. If the batsmen had the fundamentals sorted out and understood the game, you take your guard and you take a step a yard down the pitch, and you negate the swing,
Yep.
It's not rocket science. You negate the swing, and I'm not saying they probably would have won, but at least they wouldn't have made 27. So you negate the swing, you play straight, mid on, mid off, cover, extra cover. Try not to play any square shots because you don't know, you can't estimate because the bounce was inconsistent. And you push back at the bowlers, you force the bowlers to come to you now, because then you realize that the swing is not going to be as effective because you're negating the swing by taking your guard on the pitch. If they put the wicket keeper up to the stumps, all you probably do is move back a little bit closer to the stumps so that you don't run the risk of being stumped. But you still negate much of the swing. Because when I'm watching it, because I was in the president's suite when the match was going on, and I could see the balls swinging and cutting on the pitch, which is why I realized a lot of batsmen are bowled or LBW. So
right.
they were bowling wicket to wicket, getting the swing, and our batsmen couldn't deal with it.
But that's where Asami comes in. So here's a point on that. Like we talked about again, the administration, the leadership, those in charge, right? The player may not necessarily see it. But as an experienced leader of your team, you should be talking to your players to say, look, this is how the pitch is playing. You have to make some adjustment in your batting. You need to take one more step down the pitch. If he comes up, then there's a chance of the ball going by the wicketkeeper. You don't take that risk as a wicketkeeper. You come too close to the stump, the ball may go over your and score four. So that's where you get the guide. You need guidance as a player sometimes because you're so in the game, you're not thinking holistically about the game.
Yeah, but the thing is to say, the coach can always identify it, and bring it to the players. But as you know, in technique, it's instinct. If you're used to doing something over and over again, it takes a long time to break that habit and then install a new instinct. So when you're playing the same way for all your life, and your coach says, look, your bat is coming down from first slip, and there's a big gap between your front pad and the bat. You're not thinking, when you go on the pitch, you're not thinking about correcting that. The instinct takes over. When that ball is coming to you at 80 miles an hour or 90 miles an hour, your natural instinct is to go back to what you're used to. So
that is true.
It's not about identifying it, but it's also ensuring that in practice you're doing it over and over again. I remember there did an interview with Shivnara and Chandapal a long time ago. I mean, it was while he was still playing for the West Indies, so it was a good while ago. And he was batting for he spent about 4 hours in the nets or 5 hours in the nets. And the interviewer asked him, why is it that you bat so long in the nets? And he said, because that's how long I intend to bat when I'm at the crease. The other players on the West Indies team at the time were spending an hour by comparison in the pitch, in the nets, practicing. And you saw that when we were playing for the West Indies. Chandapal at the crease, and wickets are falling all the way around him. And he was the only person there. Because you have to practice to break the bad habits, the practice to correct the technique, the practice, incessant the practice to break the habit and create a new habit. And that's what we're not seeing with the players. When I said earlier, when you see these guys bat, they're not practicing because they're making the same mistakes year in, year out, match after match. Take, for example, Shimron Hetmeyer. When was the last time Hetmeyer batted for more than half an hour in any match that he played? Because
he's very impetuous and he
same shots get out all the time. Nothing changes.
And then he hit his bat down and get upset at himself. And he said, you mentioned a player earlier in football, Cephas.
Yeah.
I was watching a program on Arsenal and how to develop players by there's a black coach there who's now at Fulham. And it was amazing to me how much time he talked about they spent on the mental part of the game.
Yep.
A lot of time on the mental part of the game, not just the physical part, the mental part. So that's something I think we don't do as much in the Caribbean as we should, actually.
No, we don't think we play off instinct.
Yeah.
Cephas, for example, he has all the tools. He's quick. He's good with the ball at his feet. But he also needs to learn when to cut inside and create, or when to go down the line and put the ball across instead of trying to. Once you beat the fullback, you don't need to try beat him again. Just beat him and put the ball across.
Yep.
Right? And you saw that in the match against Guatemala when he just kept beating the fullback, put the ball across the goal, and give the forwards an opportunity to score. But then what he likes to do, he likes to dribble, then he cuts back, and he cuts back again. By that time, a midfielder comes down and covers off the hard space, so he has nowhere to go, and he has to pass either the ball or loses the ball. What he needs to do is just keep it simple. Beat the fullback. Well, first of all, look at where your forwards are. Decide to either pass the ball back and hold position and hold the play up. Then look across this where your forwards are running towards the goal in the channels. Beat the fullback and put the ball across the goal.
Yeah,
but
totally agree.
He always ends up keeping the ball too long, and then eventually the team comes back and sets up, and then it becomes more difficult to score.
So now this is the sport, track and field. We've talked about the demise of West Indies cricket. We've talked about our inability in the Caribbean, I put my words, to produce world-class footballers and the challenge that we face. And yet in track and field, even though it's an individual sport, we don't have those problems. So I'm going to let you run with the track and field. I won't even ask a lot of questions. I'll just run with it. Give me your perspective on the track and field. You talk about McKinley and the wins to the Quarry and the Atties and come down to where we are to the Bolt era now. Talk me through that. And also, another point I want to mention before I go. The Trinidad demise and the Jamaica growth. I'm trying to marry those two, and it's still over my head. So, take it away.
Well, with Trinidad, that's an equation that I can't solve because they have the talent, but for some reason, they're not able to make that talent matriculate to the senior levels. I mean, they have a Jeremy Richards now. Jeremy's 31. They have a young girl coming up called Leah Bertrand who's really good. She ran 1092 at NCAAs, and she just won the national championship on the weekend, 11:04. And they have a few good kids. I mean, Keyshawn, but Keyshawn, Olympic gold medalist, and of course, bronze medalist in 2016. But he's at the back end of his career now, And Tyrese Horsford has retired because of a consistent injury. But Trinidad has the talent. But the problem with Trinidad, I think, is because of the complete opposite of what we see in Jamaica. In Jamaica, there is a desire for a lot of kids. Look, track and field is in Jamaica, track and field is a means to an end for a lot of Jamaican kids. So there's a desire there to be good at it so that you can get an opportunity to break free of either the environment or just to make a better life for yourself. Where Jamaica differs from the rest of the Caribbean is that we have a strong grassroots program, which is the common thread tonight, where over the years, we've seen GC Foster produce so many great coaches, and they are spread far and wide now. They used to be just at a few schools in the country, but now they're from Morant Bay to Negril Point, where these coaches have gone into schools, identified the talent, and developed that talent. And a lot of that talent has matriculated to high school and then eventually to colleges abroad. And of course, then that's a dynamic. That's a lot of Jamaicans don't understand. There's something I'm about to say that, we talk about kids being burnt out in Jamaica. U.S. colleges burn out kids, Jamaican kids. It's the biggest nonsense I've ever heard in my entire life. And I'll tell you why. And I'll just use these examples. If U.S. colleges burnt out Jamaican kids, how do you explain Merle Notty, Juliet Cuthbert, Sandy Richards, Gillian Russell, Delrine Ennis London, Bridget Hilton, did I say VCB already? Gregory Horton, and the list goes on and on and on and on. The problem is, and this is something I don't think we're willing to accept, is that the problem is that a lot of these kids are burnt out from their here in Jamaica because the coaches. I remember talking to Jura Levy a few years ago after she graduated from Oklahoma University. And I remember picking her up at the airport and taking her out, dropping her, because she was coming back to Jamaica to train at Spring Tech. And she said when she was at Veer, the training at Veer was harder than the training at Oklahoma. And I'm sure if you talk to a lot of the kids in U.S. colleges right now, they'll tell you the same thing.
I went to KC. I used to see the 400 meters runners train. Brutal,
right?
Yeah,
there's a reason why you will see a U.S. kid, for example, who a Jamaican kid blows him away at the junior level. And then the U.S. kid comes through and becomes a world beater. Why? Because their progression is not as intense as ours. U.S. college system does not destroy our kids. We do here in Jamaica. Right? There are a lot of coaches who will tell you behind the scenes that, yes, that's true, but they won't admit it publicly because they don't want to upset their colleagues. But the fact is, look, when you see a kid in Jamaica running world-class times in class 2 at Champs, for example, it tells you that you're training these kids like professional athletes. I remember talking to a doctor a few years ago, and he tells me that a lot of times when these kids are down in high school in Jamaica, their mitochondrial energy levels are so depleted that they can't get back to any level where they're able to function beyond the junior level because their energy levels are just completely depleted. For those who might not understand, the mitochondria they're like the batteries in your cells in your body, and it's why when between exercises you take recovery time like 90 seconds before you try the next set when you're in the gym, because you burn up that energy and then you have to give your body a chance to replenish that energy in those cells for you to replicate the exercise that you're doing. By the time a lot of these kids get to college in the United States, their mitochondrial levels are so depleted that they can't do anything beyond college, and they're literally struggling in college, which is why I see sometimes when they go to college, they're not producing the time that they were producing in high school because they're just not capable anymore. All right, so that's one part of it. The other thing that I'm going to say is this. Over the years, let me start. I had a conversation one year with a young lady who used to go to Howard Technical High School. And that was about 10 years ago. And when she graduated, I reached out to her and said, so what, you're going pro? She said, no, sir, I'm not going pro. I'm going to get my master's degree. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to try to build a life for myself and my family. That example is what about 90+% of the athletes who leave Jamaica have in their minds as their ambition. They have no ambition of going to the Olympics or the World Championships. This is about an opportunity for them to get a degree, get a green card, file for them families, and send them up to the States. Or if they're unable to do that, send money home to their families to break the cycle of poverty that many of them come from. Right? So when we talk about, they lose them to high school, the U.S. college system, that has nothing to do with it. These kids had never had any intention at all to go to the Olympics or to the World Championships. This was something that they identified early. They have a talent. That talent can get them a scholarship. That scholarship can get them a degree. A degree gets them an opportunity to live in a country where the opportunities are better than what they're coming from. And that is why Jamaica is what it is. About 3% of those kids eventually go on to have successful careers as athletes. But to your broader point, Jamaica has been fortunate in so many years. I remember the first time I read about Herb McKinley, and I was wondering why Herb McKinley got so much of the praise when Arthur Wint was the guy who won Jamaica's first gold medal at the Olympic Games. To this day still boggles my mind. I think it's because Herb came back and became involved in track and field in many ways and did so many things. But Arthur Wint was... But
when was a doctor? He lived in Lucia. He had a big house by Washington Taylor Park. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Wint was a doctor. He was a pilot. He helped so many poor people in Hanover. And somehow that story gets lost in the narrative of what makes an athlete great. George Roden actually set a world record in 1950. 2 years before the Olympics in 52 and defended the title. August 1950, he set the world record. Herb McKinley was the first man to break 46 seconds, yes, but it was George Roden who set the world record going into the 52 Olympics. He doesn't get the accolades either. Herb McKinley did not have an individual gold medal at the Olympics for Jamaica, yet he's the biggest name. That's the contribution.
By a good distance too.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. If you think about, you've been involved in track and field for the longest, been at, all these major significant accomplishments that Jamaica's accomplished over the years. Yeah. What two things? What are the most iconic moments in your mind, and also most disappointing?
The iconic moment is easy. Watching Usain Bolt beat his chest 25 meters out from the finish line in Beijing in 2008 and setting a world record. That will leave
the 958. Yeah.
No, the 58 was impressive in 2009. Right. Talking about Beijing 2008.
Okay.
If you go across the Olympic Games from 1896 until now, you will never see another moment like that where a man is running into the fastest man in the world and 20 meters out from the tip, beating his chest and running across the finishing line, celebrating a victory and setting a world record. That was, to me, absolutely extraordinary. I mean, what he did in Berlin a year later is fascinating as well, 9.58. Nobody has come close to that except him in 1963 when he ran in London. But that, for me, is probably the most iconic moment in my mind from a Jamaican perspective.
Well, you say made me a celebrity for a day.
Yeah.
You know how? I went to the 2012 London Olympics. I had on my Jamaica gear. everybody wanted to know me, take picture with me, be around me, because you're Jamaican. So he made, and that was when he had lost in the World Championship when he first started, and people were concerned about the race in London against Blake. People don't realize how much the world wanted Usain to win. Not they were against Blake, they just wanted Usain to win. You in the stadium with people from all races, all creed, and they want to take pictures with you. They want to be around. They want to ask you questions about both. I have not known nothing about both. I don't meet both. I've met both. What are your thoughts about both? How is it going? Do you think he can win? And you're just taking pictures, you're just smiling. You're just lapping it up.
Yeah, it's crazy. Usain Bolt transcended the sport in ways in which I don't think any other Jamaican athlete has ever managed to accomplish. I remember when I just come back to Jamaica. Came back to Jamaica in 2008. And I remember being at the Jamaica Invitational and when Bolt ran 9.76. I remember seeing the time and thinking, nah, that's not right. There's something wrong with the clock. Because I remember he had run a couple of weeks before by GC Fast, I think it was around 10:03. And when he ran the 9.76, I was like, no, I mean, this is not real. I mean, it just didn't feel real. And I remember Buzz Magazine reached out to me at the time and asked me to do an interview with him. And I remember going down to Spartan Health Club on Little Musgrave Road and did an interview. And he was very shy at the time. You could barely hear him speak. And I was like, this guy is so quiet and shy and unassuming. And he told me at the time that he was the only athlete that he feared over 200 was a guy called Saide Enduri. And I was like, but why would he be afraid of Enduri though? Because he's so much faster than Enduri. But I mean, he probably knew better than I did. Anyway, and then he went to Trinidad, I think ran 9.9, and then went to New York and ran 9.72. And from there, it was just record after record and extraordinary performance after extraordinary performance. The disappointing performance is a little bit more difficult for me. I think, whoa.
I am thinking Asafa's, just general. Sorry to call it athlete.
Yeah, the thing with Asafa for me is that after Asafa went to Athens in 2004 and stepped out at the moment in the final and laid down on the track and then eventually came fifth when he was favored to win. I kind of started to sense from then that he didn't have the moxie of, say, a Michael Frater, for example. I don't want to use Usain Bolt because Usain Bolt is the extreme. Because remember 2005, Asafa had a groin injury and Michael Frater went to the World Championships in Helsinki. And nobody gave Jamaica a chance of winning a medal there. Michael Frater came back with a silver medal, if you remember. And in 2007, when I knew for a fact that there was no expectation from my perspective on Asafa, was when he was in the final in Osaka in the 100-meter final, having never lost to anyone in that race before, leading at 60, and choked. He said it himself after the race. I panicked, right? And not only did it's not like he lost, he came third because Tyson Gay won and Derek Atkins from the Bahamas came through and came second. And from then, I always had it in my mind never to have any expectation of Asafa in any global event, because those two examples told me enough. And why I am, the other thing about that is that when, if you remember, Bolt was talking about Asafa in 2008, he mentioned that he was looking for Asafa on his shoulder. That was the only person he was worried about, because Asafa had beat him in a meet just before the Olympics. Asafa ran 9.88 and Bolt ran 9.89. And that was the last time Bolt lost to Asafa. But Bolt said he was looking for Asafa. When he realized that Asafa was not close, was when he found out, when he started beating his chest, because he was expecting Asafa to be close. I never expected Asafa to be close in at all. But Bolt had that belief in him. But for some reason, Asafa has never been able to find it in himself, to believe in himself enough to win. Because if you remember 2009, in Berlin, Asafa run 9.84 in the final, coming third behind Tyson Gate 971 and Bolt 958. Had Asafa run that 984 in either Athens in 2004, which he was capable of, or in Osaka in 2007, he would have been Olympic and world champion in those years. So he ran his best in that year and came third because by then Bolt had come on the scene and it then took over the era and it became the Usain Bolt era when it could have easily have been the Asafa Paul era. But I think though, but to answer the question, I'm thinking about it and I realize that maybe it would be Oblique Seville last year. And not through no fault of his own.
Right, yeah.
Because he had
last year, the Olympic between Noah and Oblique between Noah and Kishen. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, because I remember, if you remember how easily Oblique won his semifinal, he literally cruised, and then he picked up when he told me, he said he felt something in his groin at about 30 and tried to push. And the pain, the discomfort wouldn't go away, which is what. Remember, he finished back of the pack and ran 991,
Yeah.
Right? The thing about it is that, so from that perspective, that was probably my biggest disappointment because I honestly believed, I know a lot of people are saying Kishen Thompson. But I honestly believed, and I said to people and they looked at me like I'm crazy, that if Oblique Seville was healthy in that final, he would have won. And he would have won comfortably.
That's an interesting point because when I see them run, it's almost as if because Kishen has such a good start and he's so powerful, right? And his transition is so good, I find it hard for Seville to beat him. Because Seville starts really, really well, right? But Kishen is not like Bolt. He has a start. Mm-hmm. He's out there with you and he has that power. So you get up to speed and you get up to speed. It seemed like it's when I watched Kishen run the other day, I thought he didn't have enough big races to beat now at the Olympics because he did what Gatlin did when Bolt came up on Gatlin. Mm-hmm. Your form goes to haywire at the end of the race.
Yep. That's what happened because of the lack of experience.
Yes.
But if you look at how, all right, you remember that race in London recently where Oblique beat
destroyed Noah.
Yeah. If you look at his phases, if you look at how his block start is great, his drive phase is great, his transition is excellent, and his acceleration is off the chain. And you saw that in the relay earlier in the day, how fast he is. I honestly believe, and look, and Kishen is the big name right now because he's run 975. But I'm telling you that I honestly believe in the bottom of from my gut, that if Oblique Seville is able to run a race without being injured or being hampered by injury, he is going to be the fastest Jamaican at the end of this era and probably the second fastest Jamaican of all time.
You know why I don't doubt you? The most interesting point of that race was at 70, 80 meters, Noah didn't gain on him.
No.
I don't think people realize how important that is, given Noah is a 200-meter runner, how powerful he is in the last, and he maintained his acceleration. He didn't gain on him. I was watching the race thinking, he's not gaining on him.
Not at all. And the other race that tells you something is that national championships. Oblique had the cramps that were really difficult to deal with. You could see him break out into tears, wondering why these things keep happening to him. So he didn't push out of the blocks fast.
That is true.
Because he was cautious and was in the pack. In fact, he was back of the pack at 30. What did he run? 983. He was actually closing on Kishen, who ran 9.75 at the end. He got
so Leighton, there's a lot of comments about that. Was it a mental breakdown? Was it because in the semifinal he seemed like he had a cramp or something? That was an interesting one, and the dialogue around that.
I had a conversation with Glenn last year. I did a story about it as well. Glenn says that when Oblique competes, when he has multiple rounds in one day, for example, he has a biochemical buildup in his body that restricts his mobility. And they've been trying to sort that out for the longest while. And I don't know if they've figured it out this year because even though the gap between the relay in London and the 100-meter final was longer than an hour and a half. But it appears as if they're getting the better of it now. And it's the reason why at the finals, in the trials, for example, he had the cramps, because that is something that's similar and affected in Paris last year, where when he runs a semifinal at 9 o'clock and he had a final at 10:30, I don't know if it's a lactic buildup, because you flush, the physio tries to flush the lactic from your system, during your warm down, and of course, as you prepare for the next round of competition, to flush as much of the lactic out of your body as possible. And there is something that prevents his body from recovering fast enough. There's a way in which he can do it, but I don't know if he's willing to try it. It's sodium bicarbonate. It's perfectly legal.
Put anything in your body that may have any kind of skepticism associated with it at any point, actually. You know how IAF is when it comes to these things, actually.
Yeah, but it's legal.
Okay.
It's legal,
But he may have an adverse reaction to it too, right?
That could happen, but
yeah. So I have a question for you. I look up the track and field. So talk about the women and the men. Are we now at a good point in the men? We've seen a rebirth in the men when it comes to sprinting. I see Levine in 202 looking good.
Yeah, the men are coming back. The men are coming back, and it's a good look. I mean, we have 4 guys now on the 9.9, and we have the fastest man in the world. We have the 3rd fastest man in the world, and we have the 6th fastest man in the world. And we have a youngster level who, right now, looking like he could be, a spoiler for any of the top guys, because that 982 was really fast.
And what happened in the national trials with him?
I think the delay affected him a little bit more.
Okay.
And the race got away from him early, and he just gave it up. He realized that you can't catch a 9.7 man if you're at the time he's a 9.9 man, and he's away from you. You're not catching him. So he kind of probably just said, let it go, because he still had the 200 to run.
Right.
Because when I spoke to him afterwards, he said it was just one of those days. And it's probably his best way of explaining it. Yeah, so the men are back with the sprints. Not at the depth as we had before, but because that was back in 2012 and in 2008 we had like 12 men on that 10 seconds, which is why people like Jack Holly Harvey had to go to Turkey, and Kimberly Brown had to go to Bahrain, and Andrew Fisher had to go to Bahrain, because they couldn't get into the top team. Now it's 4, and there are some guys who are close, like 10 zeros, like Ron Watson, and of course Goldson from by Sprint Tech. There are some guys who are 10 zeros, and they're getting closer. So maybe in another year, because they're all still young, in another year we'll have maybe 5 or 6 guys, or 6 or 7 guys on the 10 seconds, which would be a good thing. But you said something a while ago about our men, because there's this thing in Jamaica which I find amusing, that when our men don't do well, we don't think our track and field is doing well.
But I don't think that way, actually. I love our women, but that's a good point you're making.
Yeah, I'm not saying you do, but that's a perception in Jamaica. When our men aren't doing well, we're not doing well. But if I don't remember the actual numbers right now, we can tell you this, and people can check it out if they want. Between 1948, when we won our first Olympic medal, and 1980, when Merle Nassib won Jamaica's first Olympic medal as a woman, Jamaica won, I think it was like 12 medals at the Olympic Games. From 1980 to present day, our women have out-earned medals for our men at the Olympic global championships overall.
Right.
And if you take Usain Bolt's record medals out of it, the disparity is even worse. Our women have done remarkably well over the years. Even when our men are failing, because look, I mean, after Usain Bolt retired in 2017, for example, we had Shelley and Elaine and Sherika doing remarkable things. 1, 2, 3 at the Olympic Games, 1, 2, 3 at the World Championships, 1, 2, 3 at the Diamond League meet in Oregon. Elaine ran 10:54. Shelley ran 10:60 7 times in one season. Sherika becoming the first woman and the only woman to win medals in both the 100, 200, and 400 at the global level. But for some reason, we always seem to think that when our men are not doing well, Jamaica's track and field is not doing it. But it's actually, the contrary is actually true, where the women are always doing well, just that sometimes the men take a dip. And look, the thing with the men is that, and a lot of people take for granted as well, is that Jamaica's best sprinters, male sprinters, came along in the same era, which was the Usain Bolt era. If you look at what Johan Blake, 969, would have won any global championships except for the years when Bolt were winning in 963 and 958. You look at Asafa's 9.72, would have won most Olympic Games or World Championships. Nesta Carter would have been in most top three with 978. Michael Freight at 988. Steve Mullings 980. So we got this coalescing of talent that all came in the same window from 2004 up to 2016, where remember now, Jamaica has the fastest man in the world, the second fastest man in the world, the fourth fastest man in the world. Right? So it's Bolt, Blake, Asafa. And then, of course, it drops down to Nesta Carter, who is now outside the top 10, because I think Nolas and a couple of people. No, not Nolas. But he's probably still in the top 10, actually. 978, I think, puts him in the top 10 all the time. But we had an emergence of talent within that era, where individually, if they were in other eras, they would have been dominant in any other era except this era, because they just came along at the wrong time. And in fact, it's not just Jamaica, it's the globe. Tyson Gay 969, Justin Gatlin 974. In any other era, they would have been great.
Yes. I think from a Jamaica perspective, Blake is the one that probably got affected the most, actually.
Yeah, when that tour in 2014 was crazy.
Yeah. So I know time is against us. Last question on track and field. Your thoughts on, well, two questions. Your thoughts on the upcoming World Championship. Who's going to be, to you, the biggest star, and normally comes from the sprints in that, and would it be a Jamaican?
It could be a Jamaican, but it could also be a St. Lucian.
Also be a US too. Give how she's running.
Yeah, listen. Look, Melissa Jefferson has been remarkable this year, and if she wins a double in Tokyo, I would not be surprised. However, at the very start of this year, I said I'm going with Julian Alfred, and I'm sticking with Julian Alfred. Why? Because I think everything that Melissa Jefferson has done so far, I think Julian Alfred is still capable of doing, and probably even better as well. 965, when they ran the 10.75 and 10.77 in Oregon into a minus 1.5 wind, that basically was a basic time of about 10.67 and 10.65 and 10.67 for both women. That means they are already in 10-6 shape. I do know for a fact that on that particular day, at that particular week, Julian Alfred came into that meet with heavy legs, because she did legs on the Tuesday and she did some heavy leg work during the course of the week leading up to that race. I was told prior to that race that don't expect her to emerge from the blocks as she usually does. And that's exactly what happened. And she still ran 10.77. Now, I don't know what Melissa Jefferson did, so maybe she did the same thing. Right. What I'm saying is that while Melissa Jefferson has been extremely outstanding, because what a lot of people don't realize, if Melissa Jefferson had run with the same wind that the men ran with just minutes before, but the wind was 1.8 meters per second. That's not with a 10.57.
Wow.
Right? So she's already ready to run 10.5, because Kenny's 9.7 and wind was 1.8. Melissa Jefferson was 0.4.
She's explosive. Yeah, she's explosive.
And her phases are really, really good. So, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she wins the 100 in Tokyo or even the 200. But I still think there's something in my craw that says Julian Alfred is going to win that double. And I'm sticking with it. I'm going to stick with it until the very end. Because I do believe that when Melissa beat her I think Julian is running angry now, and she's looking for the opportunity to redeem herself. Because remember, that was the only race she's lost all year.
Right.
I'm looking at that 10.79 that she ran afterwards with a minus 1.4 win as well. Tells you that Julian is ready to run fast and run fast consistently. I'm thinking that Julian is going to run somewhere about 21.5 or 21.4 high.
Wow.
I think more 21.5 because I think the rounds will probably take some energy out of her legs in the 100. But I think she'll probably run in the region of 10.65 or 10.63 too. I think it's going to come down to execute the best in that 100-meter finals. And I think probably Tina Clayton is going to probably end up being third. That's why.
What about Jackson?
I'm not sure Cherika Jackson's going to run both events. I think she's going to run one or the other.
Right, because is she automatic for the 2? What is that?
Yeah, she has to buy for the 200. She's a 2-time defending world champion. I think the impression I'm getting, and I could be completely wrong with it, but the vibe I'm getting so far this year is they're going to probably pick one over the other. Okay. I think the races that she runs next week, I think they'll make a determination then which event she's going to run, if she's going to do both or she's going to run one. If she runs both, I think she will likely not win either event. I think she'll probably come fourth in the 100, depending on what we see next week. Because I don't have enough data. The last time Cherika ran, it was 10.88. That's all we have to work with from last month at the national championships. Not last month before last. So if she runs next week in 100 and runs 10.7, then that's a different dynamic. And if she runs 10, or if she runs at 21 something in the 200, that's another dynamic as well that you have to factor into what she'll be like in Tokyo. So, but I don't have enough information on her yet to make a determination. What based on what I have now, I see Melissa Jefferson and Julian Alfred taking the top 2 medals in the sprints. And I think there's only one medal left up for grabs in either event. Unless I see something that tells me differently, I have to stick with that.
And current form seems to suggest that, actually. Current form.
Yeah, current. That's the data that I have in front of me. So I can't determine what Cherika will do without seeing more from her. And up to this point, at 10.88 at the national championship, remember now, she lost that race by almost a tenth of a second because Tina Clayton ran 10.81. She did say after the race that she had an injury a couple of weeks before that may have impacted, that definitely would have impacted her performance. So that I have to factor in as well. But until I see her run something else other than 10.88, that tells me that she's ready to be back at the Cherika that we saw in 2023 and 2022. I can't think of anybody else other than the 2 ladies who I just mentioned.
Right.
I think also this could be the year that Jamaica gets 1-2 in the men's 100 meters. Could be the year. And I say that very cautiously because I don't know if Kishian Thompson is going to tie up again in the final. I don't know if Oblique is going to have any other physical issues in the final. Because it's for Oblique, for me, it's not just about the physical as well. When you've been to 3 consecutive global finals and failed to deliver, invariably plays on your mentals. Is it going to happen again? Because until something else happens, you're going to continue to believe that something is likely to happen that will prevent you from winning. And so he's going to have to, other than the physical of going to that race and running fast, he's going to have to overcome a mental hurdle as well of going into that final and thinking, okay, this is my moment. I'm going to win this. Everything that happened in the past is the past. This is my moment now. And that's how I think. And it's the same for Kishian as well. Because we've seen Kishian run races so far this year, and his last 30 meters have not been convincing. He's been overstriding. He's looked tight. Even in races when he's comfortably in front, that race that he won, trying to remember where it was, where he ran 9.85, I think it was. It was after trials. The last 30 meters, he was he was overstriding in the last 30 meters, and
he's bouncing around a bit. Yeah.
And his shoulders had gone up again. So I don't know if the last few weeks they've been working on fixing those things, because if they fix it, then clearly, and nobody can overcome the physical and mental issues that will come to play in any final. I think they could get up 1-2. In fact, that race that comes up next weekend in Lausanne, where there's Kishen in that race, as well as Noah Lyles, and I think Kenny Bednarik is not going to be there, but I think there's a couple of the fast people are going to be in that race as well. Whoever wins that race, I think, will go into Tokyo a lot more confident than they went into that meet in Lausanne. And I think, based on what I am hearing and based on what I think I understand, I would not be surprised if Oblique Seville wins that race and wins that race comfortably as well.
I don't think Noah intimidates Oblique at all. I mean, he's beaten him twice now easily.
No.
Right? So, as you're saying, maybe it's more the moment than the competition.
No, it's not the individual, it's a moment.
Yeah.
Because remember, Oblique was in the Olympic final in 2021. He was in the World Championship final in 2022, came fourth. He was in the Olympic final last year and finished at the back of the pack. Because the last two, because of physical issues. And those physical issues will give way to mental issues. There are a lot of people who think that you can just get up and go run fast whenever you feel like. But the mental side of things is key, and it's one of the reasons why U.S. athletes used to dominate Jamaican athletes for years, until I remember Million Walker saying to me after the 2008 Olympics, now when Bolt went out there and won that 100 meters and set the world record, it gave every single person in that Jamaican camp the belief that it could go out there and win. Remember that? Shelley had won, I think Shelley had won before, right? 10.78. And Bolt came along. But even when Shelley had won then, because Shelley was new, it was Bolt who gave them that belief that, hey, we can do this. And then eventually Bolt got into the heads of the Americans, because you remember over the years, the reality is that when you look at the relays, for example, the US kept fumbling the button, especially in the final, because they're all so worried about Usain. And they kept messing up because of that mental issue. So the reality is that if Oblique can get past the mental side of that thing and put whatever happened in the past behind it, which is a lot easier said than done, and run like he knows he can win it. And similar for Kishina as well.
Okay. Last question. One on the board says, Leighton, can Jamaica substitute in the ladies 100 meters be the fourth place finisher, or can they select someone like a Tia?
No. The rules under the J3 are the top three, unless somebody's injured. Like, remember, the top three is injured. And Tia Clayton necessarily wouldn't be included because she didn't even finish the race. If you remember, she fell on the track and she got injured and she was helped off the track. So for them to insert her into an individual spot would
have uproar like Merlin Atty Australia, was it?
Uproar would not be the word. Yeah, but I think there could probably. I think there is room if you can prove fitness. The top three are cemented, but the relay squad is at the discretion. I think the top four, I think, and then at the rest at the discretion of the selection committee. So if she can prove fitness, like she runs a fast time, she can make the relay squad.
Okay.
Yeah. But the thing is, I think Jamaica's team this year can be weak regardless. I don't think we can beat the United States in the 4x1 for women. Even with Sherry Cup, Shelly is not the Shelly that Shelly is. Shelly. I don't look. I love her to death in terms of what she's been able to do for her career, but she can't go God mode anymore.
Yeah.
I think Shelly is more back to being a mere mortal.
Father time is undefeated, so yeah.
Yeah. So and of course the Clayton twins are there, but unless if Tia can get back to a 10-8 shape, we can be competitive, because remember Americans have a 965 and 2.9 and 3.98s. 10.65. Yeah, 10.65 and 3.10.8s.
Yeah.
Right? And so we are going to have to be able to match that speed on the track. And right now, I don't think we can. we can be close, but I don't think we can match that speed.
Well, I think you can match it in terms of baton change, right?
Yeah.
But our baton change is never the best anyway. So
because we don't practice enough.
Yeah.
We don't practice enough.
Let me finish off by talking about SportsMax.
Right.
What happened?
Um,
And why were you notified?
SportsMax, what it is, I know we're losing money. The details of it I can't speak to because I'm above my pay grade. What I can say is that I don't think that the new principals of the company had any interest in media whatsoever. I think Mr. O'Brien, the founder, who had to relinquish the bulk of his shares in that debt for equity swap last year, and reduced him to 10% of the company, wanted to be in media. I think these guys who took over had no interest in media whatsoever, for example, because when their signs were everywhere. They got rid of Nicholas Matthews in October last year. Then the production manager, Jerome Larman, went, and then Ransford Ricketts went. And when you see them start removing the people at the top like that, and then the marketing people went in March, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And so I wasn't really surprised when on 4:25 p.m. on the 7th of July, we got an email for our meeting at 9, in-person meeting at 9 a.m. the next morning.
Dreaded 9 a.m. in-person meeting.
Yeah. So when you get an email that late in the day for a 9 o'clock meeting the next morning, you know it's never good news. So when I went to the room, before the guy came in to talk about what he was doing, I turned to the guys and said, "So when I got one plan for you the redundancy money?" And they thought I was joking, but I wasn't. I mean, it was inevitable. I mean, you saw it coming, and look, they made their decision because I don't think they were interested in media, and because remember, it's not just SportsMax. It was Loop, it was Scene, it was on the SportsMax channels themselves. There was an opportunity there for them to probably try something dynamic and shift, to turn our fortunes around on a financial level. But I don't think there was an interest there at all. So you get the impression that it was just a matter of time before they found the stomach to look at the staff and say, "Look, we're winding down." So
yeah, I mean, cable networks just globally are challenged, right?
Yeah,
it's a challenge because the advent of alternative media makes it difficult.
Yeah, listen, from as early as when I joined SportsMax in 2016, and I remember in 2017 there was a survey that was done, a global survey that said the bulk of the world now watches their sports on their devices. Right, it says either your phone or your tablet or whatever. They're not watching it on TV anymore. That, I think, was when we should have pivoted to a more digital, digital platform, but we didn't. We were holding on to cable, and we had an app, but a big part of the reason why I think the app was struggling as well is that we lost a lot of the properties that we used to have. We used to have English Premier League, we used to have Diamond League, but those properties are expensive. I remember talking to a guy at Savannah Park in the last test series here in Kingston. And he was saying that why we don't get by the EPL. I said, do you know how expensive that is?
Especially now, it's wrong.
If we buy the EPL, there is no amount of advertising, no amount of sponsorship that you can get that can cover the cost of that, let alone make a profit. It's expensive, and there's the reason why even in the UK, a lot of people watch their EPL matches at pubs because it's too expensive for their home platforms. I mean, their home.
That is true.
Systems.
In fact, they don't get the 3 o'clock games.
Exactly.
They get very limited. Yeah. When I was in the UK, I use a alternative. When I used to live in the UK, I would have something called Sling. I would sling the games from America, which is easier to get it to the UK. They get more games in America than they did in the UK, actually, which is interesting.
Yeah, because it's the challenge is this. Where does the bubble burst? Because every year players want more money, which means that the clubs want more money. They need to earn more money to to pay the players, and therefore the broadcasters invariably have to pony up more money.
Yes.
To satisfy the FA or wherever it is, whether it's a league or wherever it is.
NBA no different. NBA no different, by the way.
NBA no different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what it is that there's going to come a point when the rubber meets the road where the fans just won't be able to afford it anymore. So what do they do then? Because players are earning £300,000 a week playing in English Premier League. Then the man who is going to the match and paying how many £100 for a match day, are paying how much, tens, I mean maybe 100. I don't know what the rates are in England now for the
it varies. Arsenal, I think it's 2,000 something pounds a year, so we're trying to do about 100 and something pounds per game.
So you're how many, there's gonna come a point where you just can't afford it anymore. So what happens next? Because look, I know the players want more money. Some of it I don't understand, because somebody else paying me £150,000 a week. I am good. You can't pay me the rest of my life. I don't have to worry about my career after that, because £150,000 a week, all you have to do is invest some of it, and you get a nice house somewhere.
Yeah.
And look at what's his name? That plays for Philadelphia Eagles. Quarterback.
Hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, Hurts. Hurts lives in a house that costs $400,000.
Yeah. He's an aberration, though. He's a very unique individual. Yeah.
And that's the thing. He's an aberration, but he should be the norm, because
yes, he should be. Yes.
When a lot of these players are earning, say, $50 million a year, more than half of that goes out of their pocket right now. Most of it goes out into either federal or state taxes. You have to pay your agent. You have to pay your manager. You pay for all the different services that you require, and you end up with probably a third of that.
Hey, Leighton, I'm glad you bring that up. Because when somebody says you get 400,000, then you get it in your pocket to walk away and spend it. That's not how it works.
No, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with track and field. When people hear athletes sign contracts and they think the athletes are rich, they have to pay the coach and the club that they are affiliated with. They have to pay an agent. They have to pay a manager. They're paying probably the PR, somebody to do the PR for them. And they have to pay for physio, nutritionist, all kind of different things. That money goes into making their careers what it is. So they're not walking around with billions in your bank accounts or millions in your bank accounts or millions in your pockets. So the impression that the athletes, I mean, look, there are exceptions to the rule, obviously, like a Bolt or a Shelley or Tyson Gay or the big names.
Right.
But that's not the case for the average athlete. Because those contracts might sound like a lot of money, but when you finish paying out whoever you're paying out to, you're not left with much.
So what's funny is that I was looking at Tony, who went to play in Saudi Arabia. I think at Brentford he's making about £50,000 a week. At Saudi Arabia he makes $250,000. Now, if you tax effect that, if you stay out of the country for a certain while, you don't pay any tax in Saudi Arabia. He's making 10 times what he was making, literally making 10 times making, right? So in 1 year he can make what he made entire Premier League career.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So but you see, but again, that's the situation where, to me, I don't want to use this term, because I don't want people to think that I'm begrudging people their money. Because if you deserve it, you earn it. This yours.
I tell you a bad mind, I tell you a bad mind.
Yeah, but I think some of it is just greed. Because, all right, you and I know how this thing works. If somebody's paying you £300,000 a week, why do you need more?
You need 3 Ferraris and 2 Bentleys and 2 Rolls Royce.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, because take Sadio Mane, for example, used to play for Liverpool. Sadio, not even Mane, French player that used to play for Everton, and then not Everton, kind of small. I can't remember his name right now. He used to drive a Mini Cooper to work.
Oh, you're talking about Kante,
right?
Yeah, talking about Kante.
Right? So, because I can't tell you, if I was earning that amount of money per week, I probably take all the tube to work, right? And you look on some safe investments thing and say, okay, my career might last 10 years if I'm lucky. You put the bulk of your money. I don't need to drive a fast car. I don't need to look to a woman. I don't because how I live my life. If I have a wife and I have or a girlfriend who I'm serious about, I don't need to walk up and look somebody else. And maybe because I don't have that money.
That's you. Some people have to have a wife and 2 girlfriends. That's expensive.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I don't think there's a need to live that way. I mean, so if you're earning, that's an obscene amount of money.
It is obscene.
I mean, when you look at what some of these players are able to do, in their daily lives, do they need all of that?
And most of them end up broke.
That's the thing. The minute they retire, they're broke because they're living that same lifestyle, and the money's not coming in anymore.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I have to read people like Magic Johnson, and read somebody like Steve Kerr, and read somebody like Grant Hill, who, when they were playing, they weren't splurging their money on foolishness. They were investing it wisely, and their careers are over. And look at Shaq, for example, right?
Well, better examples are Junior Bridgman and Vinnie Johnson and Junior Bridgman.
Yeah.
Right? Shaq made a lot of money. Vinnie Johnson and Junior Bridgman played way back then. They didn't make a lot of money, but they've done phenomenal.
They're billionaires,
Yeah.
So it's about how you perceive your life after sport, because you can only play for so long, and then you retire early. Remember, you might be old for an athlete at 36, but for a human being, a regular human being, you're young. Yes. And then you have your entire life ahead of you. So I don't know why. I think some of it is just they don't listen to their managers, or sometimes their managers are just as bad as they are. So I
think part of it goes back to, this is going to sound bad, the mental element.
Yeah.
Where you grew up in an environment where you're taught the value of money, where you're taught about investing, we're taught about being, cautious,
prudent.
Very prudent. Yeah, I mean that's part of that whole equation. Right, because for most of those people to go, Allen Iverson went basically broke, even though he has some money put away in trust that's going to help him out.
Money for Reebok,
but I mean, you can't make $100 million like Antoine Walker and Allen Iverson be broke. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that don't make any sense to me.
Yeah,
because like Mike Tyson, for example, Mike Tyson earned $400 million in the ring, and it was bankrupt. Yeah,
but when you just drive and say, I take this, you drive a club and say, you can take this Rolls Royce. I'm going home. It's it's crazy. So here's my last question. Actually. And I'm wait, for me to say this, I appreciate you stay. We agreed on the outset it's going to be an hour. You have been phenomenal, and it's been an easy discussion. To be honest, it's been an easy discussion because you're great at what you do. Yeah, you're great at what you do. I want to talk about Mr. Analyst because I think it's important to promote your channel, right? In any forum that you're in. And I know you talked about at the inception of the discussion here about Mr. Analyst and what you're trying to do. There's money to be made in YouTube. I'm not making any, to be honest. So it's not like me. People like you who have a profile, who have an image, who have the credibility out there. It's going to be good for you to generate the views and generate the audience and subscribers. So talk to the audience about Mr. Analyst, what you're trying to do, them subscribe to your channel. And also part of the whole equation is your audience can give you input about what they'd like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to that. Mr. Analyst is basically, first of all, let me tell you how I got the name. Over the last, I don't tell me how many years, I've been in a supermarket, I've been in a store with my wife, or an eatery, and somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, Mr. Analyst, how you doing?" And I'm like, yeah. Somehow my name Leighton Levy is hard to remember, or it doesn't resonate with people like I don't know, whoever his name is. So when we were coming up with that channel, my wife was like, it should be Mr. Analyst because that's what people call it on the road. And I'm like, okay, that works because this is what people get to know me as. The channel basically is, I'm going to try my best with the limited resources that I have to create something that will help to fill a gap that SportsMax will leave behind. So you will get from me some, and this is probably the part that I don't like the most, actually. The first 3 videos is just me talking about track and field and stuff like that. But what I want to do is I want to do some interviews. I want to talk to interesting people. I want to bring some stories from the past and bring them back present. Or I want to interview interesting people who are in the sporting sphere, whether they are athletes or administrators. I want to bring out information that people find credible, that people like, that can find useful in terms of whatever sport they're following. Just like we're having this conversation now, we're talking about some things that probably people don't even realize. That's what I want to be able to do. I want to build a platform that people can come to, knowing that regardless of the sport, they will get fair representation. It was what my radio show is all about as well. It's about, look, on the very first video I said that it's not going to be just about track and field. It's going to be a little bit of basketball, going to be a bit of football, going to be a little bit of whatever it is that's relevant at the time is going to be part of what Mr. Analyst is going to be about. I can tell you that I'm actually in negotiation to talk about an outstanding young athlete whose coach has agreed to speak with me. I just haven't cemented the time on the schedule yet. And, as I told you before, I had a conversation with Pereira about why is it that the Caribbean doesn't have a proper development program for its cricketers. I want to talk to some past cricketers about some of their exploits. I want to talk to some of the past track and field athletes about the things that they remember best from their careers. I want to find some basketball players who currently now representing Jamaica, because I know there's a significant momentum now behind Jamaican basketball.
And good players too.
Yeah, very good players. I mean, Norman Powell, nobody gets Norman Powell for free.
Thompson twins, Norman Powell,
Thompson twins, that their dad wants to do some really good things for basketball in Jamaica. I want to do some interviews with him and let him tell people about what his vision is for basketball in Jamaica. So some of those things I want to challenge some administrators, those who are willing and brave enough to come on to the channel to talk to me about why is it that some of the things that they're not doing in their sport. That's what I want to do. I want to engage people. I want people to come there and find the information interesting. I want people to come away from Mr. Analyst more knowledgeable than they came to the channel. That's what I want to be able to do with it.
Well, if you can impart the knowledge that you've imparted today and throughout your career, it'll be a breeze.
Who is Bert from 5?
He said he worked with you at the Gleaner, so I put it up. 92, 96.
1996.
So he probably has a pseudo name, probably don't have his full name. I figured.
Yeah, but 1990 to 2004 is a really great time at the Gleaner. I still have a lot of friends from there, a lot of colleagues as well.
Anyway, so you worked with Rudolph Speed when he was there?
Yeah, man, Speed was financial controller at Gleaner when I was there.
Oh, okay.
Very smart guy. A lot of people don't understand how smart he is.
Well, I had dinner with him when I was in Jamaica. When I came to the game, he and I had a 4-hour dinner because we have a love-hate relationship. People don't realize. People think I should hate him and always curse him, and I don't operate that way. I try to put out information so that the whole conflict thing. I've talked about the conflict and why it's not appropriate and why it needs to be changed. Rudolph tells me that I call him Rudolph. Rudolph tells me that he's not the only conflicted person, and it's almost innate to Jamaica. And I was like, that doesn't make it okay. But that's a different story for a different day.
Yeah, but it doesn't. That's a further point. It doesn't make it all right. At the very least, I think he should at least take a sabbatical from his current positions.
Yeah.
Just to make. But the thing about it is this. As I said at the top, if he doesn't and he chooses not to, I think for the window of time that he's going to be required, I think we can probably just hold strain, because it's like making a sacrifice for the greater good. The greater good right now is a national program.
Yeah.
And the concerns are, as I said before, the concerns are valid and the concerns are real about the conflict of interest. But and maybe Mike should say, look, just take a sabbatical from Cavaliers for the time being, or from the technical committee, as chair of the technical committee, just to make the situation less, to take away the gray areas from the situation, so that if anything and is required, for example, like a player from Cavalier gets selected to the squad, there is no impression that there was anything untoward going on behind the scene.
You tell him I have to give him baby later. I talk patois. You tell him to give him baby.
I know, but
It's not
a long-term thing. It's a temporary
no,
thing.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
No, we're about the conversation. We're about the conversation.
Yeah. So so I understand both sides of the coin. But where do you meet in the middle? That's the key thing.
No, you're making great points, and I think for a society to move forward, you have to manage those things appropriately. You have to really think through those. If you want to set the example, if you want to make people know what good looks like and what's appropriate and should be done, you have to do it. Your establishment, your organization, you have to be the example, right? So we'll stop there. Leighton, truly appreciate you coming on. Hope I can have you back at some future point in time. It's the opportune period of time. You're going to be too busy anyway, leading up to the World Championship. but because everyone's going to go engage you in your expertise and your perspective as to how things are. But truly appreciate you, and I hope we can do it again at some future point in time.
No, man. And look, it was when you called me at the stadium to come on, I was like, what? I didn't know you were going to watch along, but
I didn't realize that you didn't know that actually.
No, I did. Because I was there talking with the guys behind me. As you can tell, there were a couple other journalists next to me. Well, it was, I enjoyed it. I couldn't hear myself, so I was shouting because I couldn't hear.
I couldn't hear you either.
Yeah, it was crazy. But man. But look, as long as I'm free, just message me, and if I'm free, I'm willing to come and talk sports. This is what I do. This is what I love to do, to talk sports with people who also appreciate the sport the same way I do. And one of the things that I find sometimes that disturbs me a lot, there are a lot of people in Jamaica who claim to love the sports that they support, regardless of the sport, and they don't take time to learn about the sports that they support. And I think that's something that I think we'd like to be able to change. It's one of the reasons why this channel is important for me as well. That to when you talk to one of the things that having spent time in the United States and spent time in school in the UK, you talk to a fan, for example, and they'll tell you everything about the club that they support, everything about the complete history. In Jamaica, that's not the case. There's just a very superficial engagement with sports in Jamaica that bothers me. For example, you will find that there are a lot of people who support a KC or a Calabar or a JC, and you ask them about an athlete from 10 years ago, and they don't know. And they don't care to know. I mean, I remember interviewing an athlete from Vera a few years ago. I know we're going over time, and you say wrap up, but that's
no, keep going.
And I said to her, so I don't remember exactly how the name Aileen Bailey came up. And she said, who is that? I'm like, how can you not know probably the most successful high school female sprinter from your own school? Remember, people forget. People remember Veronica.
Really? You think she's more successful than Merlin Natty in high school?
At Veer.
Merlin went to Veer. With Rusty's, then Veer. Yeah.
Then Veer, yeah.
Yeah.
But what Aileen did at Veer was significant. I know she probably. You can probably debate the Merlin thing.
Okay.
But Aileen, if you look at what Aileen did at Veer, it's Hall of Fame stuff,
Yeah.
Right. Veronica won in Class 1. People forget.
Okay.
Right. I mean, her record was stood until they broke it the other day. But the Aileen was the queen at Vera. Well, certainly in that era. I mean, Merlin was Merlin. I mean, obviously, yeah. I remember I ran at Central Champs back in 1979. Merlin was running for Vera. I remember being at the same meet with Merlin. I used to watch her and said, Jesus Christ, this girl is phenomenal.
Wait. She's ahead. Everybody's way behind, right? She's running by herself.
By herself. Merlin was extraordinary. My only regret for her is that she didn't win more Olympic gold medals because she deserved it. But for some reason, it just never happened for her. But Merlin was absolutely special. Yeah. But I know it's 8:03 p.m. Been on for 2 hours. I promise you, I know. I'm not complaining. Yeah, but it was great being here, and I really enjoyed the chat. I mean, we should do this again. We should probably do this periodically.
All right, I'm gonna take you up on that.
Yeah, man, just reach out, and if I'm free, I'll let you know when.
All right, Leighton. Appreciate you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Anytime, boss.
Everyone in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Leighton. Everyone in the chat, thanks for being here. Appreciate you. We do a show this week on the kids who were trying to apply for Jamaica passport, and it's taking them years because they want to play for the junior national team. I have a couple of people in England reach out to me. I'm gonna do a show later this week. I was supposed to do it earlier this week, but I've had some emergencies. But we won't get it done. All right, everyone. So thanks for being here. Appreciate you, and peace out. Thanks a lot.
Peace.
Frankie Life is the best to be now. For the best sports talk, and it's free, yo. Frankie Life will be your guiding light by keeping you informed both day and night. Frankie Life, tell them. Frankie Life, heed them. Frankie Life, want them. Cranky Life. From the coast to the field, we'll never lose because Cranky has the hottest news. With expert analysis, we break it down. Our in-depth coverage is best in town. Cranky Life, tell them. Cranky Life, heed them. Cranky Life, want them. Cranky Life. Cranky Life, where the sports is spicy and where we keep the discussion lively. Cranky Life, get to know the name because Cranky analysis is never lame. Cranky Life, give me my Cranky Life. I want my Cranky Life. Must have my Cranky Life. Whether it's football or track and field, you know Cranky is at the wheel. So join the journey through victory and defeat and subscribe and don't miss a beat of Cranky Life. Tell them, Cranky Life. Heed them, Cranky Life. Want them, Cranky Life. If you're from England or USA, from Kingston or Bombay, from Kenya or Canada, Lagos or Havana, visit Cranky Life. Tune into Cranky Life. Like up Cranky Life. Subscribe to Cranky Life. Cranky Life coming to you on weekdays. Cranky Life sometimes on Sundays. Pull up a chair and take a seat because Cranky will always bring the heat. Cranky Life. Me say fi tell them Cranky Life. Me say fi heed them Cranky Life. On them Cranky Life. Cranky Life will be around. Cranky Life is the best in town. Me say fi heed them. Me say fi want them. Me say fi heed them. Want them, heed them, want them. Cranky Life. Cranky Life. Heed them. Want them. Heed them. Want them. Cranky Life. Cranky Life. Heed them. Want them. Heed them. Want them. Heed them. Want them. Cranky Life. Cranky Life. Cranky. Heed them. Want them. Heed them. Want them. Heed them.